Today I'm speaking with Pini Althaus of Cove Capital, a very old acquaintance of mine, although I haven't spoken to him in a number of years. How are you, Penny, this morning?
Good. Thank God, Jack. Good to see you again.
Thanks. You've been quite busy. Uh, when I first met you, you had founded USA Rare Earths, which is today quite successful. And I I think that people are not aware of your involvement in the American critical minerals industry, and you've been sort of you know you keep to yourself and you keep quiet, but you're quite accomplished. Um, Lately, I understand that you've been working in Central Asia, particularly in the nation of Kazakhstan, to acquire critical mineral sources for the United States. And I understand that you've had a big success recently with the very critical material, tungsten. Can you tell us something about what's happening right now in the tungsten space with regard to your companies?
Sure, Jack. Good to be back here. And as you mentioned, USA Rare Earth has been a really big success, and we hope that that continues. But I sort of saw when I stepped down as CEO of USA Rare Earth that the United States itself doesn't have enough in terms of developed projects for critical minerals here. So whilst we endeavor to have a domestic supply chain that can service everything that's required, we're going to have to look overseas. And so the obvious choices there are Australia, Canada, but we saw Central Asia as the lowest hanging fruit in terms of countries that have been blessed with an abundance of critical minerals, willing to do business with the United States and the West, enacting various mining reforms or business reforms and reforming their mining codes to enable companies like us to go in there and develop projects. So the C5+1 is celebrated its 10th anniversary this year. It was actually a couple of weeks ago in Washington. And we had the leaders of the five Central Asian countries belonging to the C5 group meeting with President Trump. But we've been active in Kazakhstan since early 2023. We're the first, and I believe still only US company to have critical minerals licenses there. We've been developing those projects over the last couple of years. Initially, it was lithium, beryllium, tantalum, niobium, cesium, rubidium, tin, and tailings projects as well. We also signed a joint venture with the national mining company Tau-Ken Samruk earlier this year to develop the Akbalak Rare Earth Project, which is the largest rare earth project in Kazakhstan. It has a historical resource going back to the Soviet era of 380,000 ton. But the big one, as you mentioned, for us is after a year sort of going through various processes of privatization in Kazakhstan, we were awarded on November 6th the largest tungsten project in the world, which contains in excess of 10% of global tungsten reserves. This was a very big decision for the country of Kazakhstan and for President Tokayev. And we had significant support from the US government, including from President Trump, very hands-on support from Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and letters of support from Exim of $900 million from DFC as well. And we've made a commitment to spend $1.1 billion there on developing the mine and the plant. And it's a 70-30 joint venture. So this gives a 50 plus year mine life to the United States if we're looking at 12,000 ton per annum. And given that China currently controls 80% of global tungsten reserves, enacted a ban on tungsten exports to the US earlier this year, tungsten was a huge priority given, as you know probably better than anyone, the uses for tungsten.
I have a question. How far do you plan to take the processing in Kazakhstan? What is going to be the product you will export from that country to the United States?
That's an excellent question, Jack, because that was a key part of the negotiations or discussions, I should say, between us and our counterparts in Kazakhstan, but also the US government in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, with its abundance of critical minerals, sees itself as having the potential to be a real global supplier of critical minerals to the West or to countries like the United States, especially. And they're not interested in having ore or concentrates shipped outside the country. They want to see us take this downstream. And what we've done, we've made that commitment. So we will be taking it further downstream, APT all the way down to metals, tools, etc. And Kazakhstan does have the ability to do this. And the team that will be developing this project for us is led by Dominic Heaton. Dominic is an Australian who was the former CEO of Masan Resources that developed the Nui Phao deposit in Vietnam. So Dominic has been working with us about the last 9 months, doing technical due diligence site visits with himself and his team, and we're ready to go.
Good. And when do you expect to begin delivery of those materials to the United States market?
Yes, the most recent feasibility study, JORC compliant mineral resource, was done in 2023. That was under the auspices of the government of Kazakhstan, the national mining company. We are going to update or do a DFS now, which may or may not require some infill drilling, but we've pretty much got a handle on the resource, how we're going to approach this. We're bringing sort of now our own technical expertise that Dominic and the team are bringing there. So we anticipate we'll be starting construction of the mine and the plant within 24 months.
I really congratulate you because in my own experience, 18 years ago, I was asked by the U.S. Department of War about tungsten, and I said, "Why isn't it on the critical minerals list?" This was 2007. They said, "Well, we've never had a problem sourcing it." And that kind of answer, I think, tells you the story of how it works in Washington. Okay, so you are really helping out quite a bit because, as far as I know, I was surprised, to be honest with you, to hear about the size of this deposit you've got in Kazakhstan, and I don't see, once that's underway, I think the entire Western world won't have to worry about Chinese monopolization of that element anymore. So this is a very good thing. Pini, what else are you looking at in that part of the world? What other kinds of projects are you developing? Because I know you must be for other critical materials.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, in Kazakhstan, we have lithium, beryllium, niobium, tin, and we are looking at opportunities in the other C5 countries, including Uzbekistan. I've made several trips to Tashkent this year. I've met President Mirziyoyev, I think it's 4 times already in 2025. Uzbekistan, like Kazakhstan, has signaled quite strongly to Washington and to the West that it's open for business. It's also enacted business reforms to its mining code, making it a lot easier for companies like us to come there and develop projects. We've already signed an agreement with the Uzbek government through UzTMK, which a lot of the projects controlled by the government are under sort of that umbrella. And we're currently doing due diligence on 2 projects, I would say in the brownfield stage, very exciting, and again would be able to provide the US with various materials that it needs for the foreseeable future. So slowly but surely sort of chipping away at the monopoly, as you mentioned. And, Washington, as you said, Jack, has sort of, both Democrats and Republicans have been guilty of sort of letting things get to where they've gotten to. People like yourself have been sitting on the sidelines observing what's happening for the last 3 or 4 decades, watching China build up its strength and this global monopoly it has on critical minerals, scratching our heads, right? Saying, how can this be allowed to happen? How can the entire United States military industrial complex, industrial sector, manufacturing sector allow itself to be reliant on China, but especially for defense, given sort of the relationship between the 2 countries? And even if it wasn't China, even if it was another non-Five Eyes country, it would put us in a precarious position. And what we've seen, yes, things started to happen under the Biden administration, but what we've seen from this administration is something that I don't think has happened before in Washington. It's a very commercial approach to tackling this issue. So we've already seen, announcements with Lithium Americas, with MP Materials, with Vulcan. I anticipate there'll be a lot more of this, and the US government is not throwing money and seeing what sticks. It's actually doing significant and in-depth due diligence into these projects. It's looking at this from a very commercial approach. And I think maybe this is something that people like Secretary Lutnick have brought into the table with that investment banking and business acumen. Of course, President Trump knows how to negotiate a deal as well and how to look at things from this perspective. And instead of, the criticisms we had heard in the past is, countries sign the NSP and then they go off and don't hear anything for a couple of years because there's no tangible outcomes or sort of next actionable steps to take, because of course the US government is not going to go in and start developing projects.
I think you're absolutely right. The difference is the commercial approach, no question about it, because the real problem in securing American sources has been that every 4 years the government changes, so that no matter what decisions were made, they're reviewed by the next guy, and half of the objection is normally political, not commercial. And I just want to mention here while I'm babbling that I just read a very good book called The American Edge. It's the history of sourcing for the U.S. military in particular, and how these situations come and go, and in almost a predictable pattern. And I think that the size of what they're doing now is amazing to me. These are not bits and pieces. Your project, I believe, is a $1 billion project. And at that point in time, things will happen. You can't just shove that under the table and forget about it in the next administration. So I want to congratulate you on persevering, okay? Because you and I have been through some ups and downs in this market, and no matter what the stock market is doing at this moment, this has nothing to do with what you're doing. And so again, good luck, and please keep in touch. I actually thought you were in Central Asia, so I was wondering how we could do the time here. Okay, but I see you're still in New York. You're that's amazing also. So thank you very much.
Will do, Jack. And it's a pleasure talking. And I have to commend you as well. I mean, we've known each other for a while. And when I came to the sector initially, your name was one of the first that popped up. Speak to Jack Lifton. He's been pounding the pavement for many, many years. And I'm glad to see, when I first went to Washington to discuss this under the first Trump administration in 2019, there were only a handful of members of Congress that knew what a critical mineral was. And most of them were on the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, like Senator Markowski, Senator Manchin, etc. So it was a very deep educational process that we've all been engaged with, trying to make Washington understand. And I think now this is one of the only bipartisan issues in Washington, and I don't see the momentum stopping. I think sort of the floodgates have been opened, and I think everyone understands what needs to be done. So it's a pleasure speaking to you again, Jack.
Thank you, Pini.
Thank you.